8 Dates, Essential Conversations for a Lifetime of Love is the work of 4 authors, John Gottman and Julie Schwartz Gottman, the research psychologists behind Seattle's Love Lab, and Doug Abrams and Rachel Carlton Abrams, a literary agent and a physician married more than 25 years. The Gottmans supply 4 decades of observational data. The Abramses supply the texture of a marriage that survived medical residency, twin infants, and a 5-hour daily commute. Their shared claim is specific. The durability of a partnership is not chance and not primarily compatibility, but whether 2 people have deliberately held 8 particular conversations and keep holding them for as long as they are together. This is a summary of that book. The authors open on the odds their readers already suspect. More than half of American marriages end in divorce, 70% in Portugal, 75% of third marriages, and add the category the statistics miss. Couples who stay together in what they call quiet desperation, discontent, and dullness. Their answer is a single sentence that carries the whole book. It is not chance, it is choice. What the Love Lab accumulated over 40 years of synchronized observational, self-report, and physiological data on thousands of couples is a map of where relationships founder and the behaviors that separate what they call the masters from the disasters. The 8 territories, trust and commitment, conflict, sex, work and money, family, fun and adventure, growth and spirituality and dreams, each get a date, a teaching chapter, exercises, open-ended questions, and a spoken affirmation. The authors wrote the book because almost no couple receives instruction in how to love well. Most, they note, do not learn to communicate until therapy, and by then it is often too late. Before the dates begin, 4 preliminaries set up everything after. The first is the date night itself, defined precisely. Pre-planned time in which both partners leave work and household work behind to focus on each other, phones off. Not television on a couch, not a movie, not friends. Doug and Rachel supply the model, a pact made on their first date during finals week to meet at midnight whether or not their work was done. It survived Rachel's 110-hour residency weeks and newborn twins, and Rachel's verdict is that they would not be together without it. The authors dispose of the standard objections: time is a commitment rather than an obligation. John and Julie's cheap date was to nurse one drink in a hotel lobby pretending to be guests. Childcare can be traded between couples, so 2 marriages benefit at once. The second preliminary is a short guideline set, the sharpest of which concerns alcohol. It disinhibits aggression along with everything else. So many couples raise their odds of a fight by drinking. The third preliminary is the 4 skills of intimate conversation. Skill 1 is putting feelings into words and then saying why, connecting the feeling to an event or a childhood story. Skill 2 is asking open-ended questions, and the supplied list ranges from the immediate to the searching. What are the feelings you are afraid to even think about? And most striking, pretend you had only 6 months to live. What would matter most? Skill 3 is the exploratory statement that invites rather than interrogates. Skill 4 is the explicitly empathic statement: "You're making total sense. No wonder you felt angry." The fourth preliminary is the art of listening, defined as listening to understand without judgment, defensiveness, or the desire to rebut. It is impossible, the authors insist, if you stay inside your own head, because then the only voice you hear is your own. Do not compose a rebuttal while your partner speaks. Do not minimize feelings or rush to fix them, since the goal is not to cheer anyone up. And witness by repeating back in your own words what you heard, which validates and keeps a partner from feeling alone. The first date takes up trust and commitment, opening with Ben and Leah, who met on the steps outside his astronomy class where she read Sartre and never looked up for 5 weeks. Her account isolates the mechanism of trust. He was steady, he showed up, he gave her his sweatshirt without asking for it back. On the date they discovered opposite inherited definitions of commitment. Leah's divorced parents left her defining trust as follow-through and attention, while Ben's parents stayed married around church and routine, but, he suspected, without real commitment to each other as people. From this, the authors build their definition. Commitment is a daily choice, and small positive things done often build what they call the cocoon of trust and safety. On boundaries, they draw explicitly on the late Dr. Shirley Glass, author of Not Just Friends, whose framework reduces to windows and walls, A committed couple builds a wall around the pair with an open window between them, and trouble begins when an unhappy partner opens a window to an outside confidant and builds a wall of secrecy against their partner. Against commitment, the authors set the single step that cascades toward every betrayal, the negative comp, the comparison of your partner to a real or imagined alternative. Rather than nurturing gratitude for what you have, you nurture resentment for what is missing. The chapter's centerpiece is a couple who arrived at John's office announcing they were done. He was their sixth therapist. They had fought after a party where the husband told his wife he had found another woman attractive because she flirted with him, and his wife no longer did. Asked what she had been thinking, the wife said she had been thinking she could do better. John told them they could go. He now understood why 5 therapists had failed. They had every outward sign of commitment, wedding and house, and 2 children, and none inside it, because both were perpetually assessing whether they could improve on each other. His explanation is the passage the chapter turns on. Alice sees an unusual rabbit go down a hole and jumps in with 2 feet. Wonderland is not a wonderful place. There are frightening and difficult things. But Alice does not hesitate, does not wait to see whether a better rabbit comes along tomorrow, and does not look back. That is commitment, and these 2 had never done it. They negotiated from self-interest rather than mutual benefit, which is why no therapist could help them. The authors extend this to the ordinary reader. Committed couples do not keep a foot out the door, do not threaten to leave, and when things go badly, they voice concerns to the partner rather than complaining about the partner to someone else. Trust is then made concrete in 2 lists. 10 ways trust is broken, from not keeping promises to physical violence, and the questions underneath every interaction. Do you cherish me? Do I come first? Are you always looking for someone better? When trust breaks, an 8-step repair sequence applies to minor and major breaches alike, permitting no skipped steps, and it requires examining feelings triggered by the incident that predate the relationship entirely. The chapter closes on cherishing as the exact inverse of betrayal. Magnify a partner's positive qualities, minimize the negative, and say so aloud. The accompanying exercise offers 99 specific reasons to tell a partner you cherish them, with the best line in the book attached as a warning. Don't be like the Swedish farmer who loved his wife so much that one day he almost told her. The second date addresses conflict, and it dismantles a myth its own case embodies. Wesley and Marie describe themselves as never fighting, which the authors identify not as bliss, but as the quiet of avoidance. Their one friction was that Wesley slept with the television on. Marie's resentment built silently for months until she wondered whether she had married the wrong man, and when he finally forced the conversation, she burst into tears and said she guessed it was over. He was baffled. It was a television, and then told her the story she had never heard. Raised by a single mother working 2 jobs, alone most nights, the television his only company until a burglary took it and left him with nothing. Marie's own silence had a history too. Her mother responded to difficulty by driving the children to a hotel at any hour and returning days later with no one discussing it, and ended relationships by changing the phone number. So Marie had internalized that any fight means the relationship is over. Afterward, she reported feeling closer to Wesley than ever. The television was solved with a sleep timer. From the case, the authors derive their conflict theory, and it reorganizes most readers' assumptions. Most relational conflict is not resolvable. 69% of the time, when couples discuss the thing they always argue about, it is a perpetual problem that will not be resolved. Relationships work to the extent that partners have a set of perpetual problems they can live with, and within those unresolvable conflicts lie the greatest opportunities for intimacy, because underneath them sits something core to a partner's personality. The 2 categories are drawn sharply. Solvable problems are situational, housework, who collects the children, where to vacation, with no deeper meaning behind the position. Perpetual problems center on fundamental differences in personality or lifestyle. Punctuality, organization, time alone versus together, how to relate to in-laws. Recognizing a perpetual problem for what it is leads to accepting difference, which the authors call the core of managing conflict. The exceptions they mark clearly. Some conflicts are genuine deal breakers. One partner wants children and the other does not. Addiction, domestic violence. Gridlock is the failure mode. You know you are in it when the same argument recurs with no progress, leaves you feeling rejected, and you begin seeing your partner as the enemy. As Marie began vilifying Wesley, his television becoming a symbol of comprehensive selfishness. The endpoint is emotional distance, which the authors name as the real relationship killer rather than anger or conflict itself. Their remedy points forward to the final chapter. Inside every gridlocked conflict is a longing and a dream buried in each person's position. Fight fair and repair is the chapter's practical core. The authors report that of all the couples who went on this date, exactly one had a fight, and that this is fine because research shows genuinely happy couples handle conflict gently. But sometimes we deliver a diatribe on why we are right, get defensive, criticize, show contempt, and turn away when we should turn toward each other. They call these regrettable incidents, and the master couple's distinguishing skill is knowing how to repair afterward. The 5-step process is a recap rather than a rematch. Name what you felt, describe how you saw it, accepting that two different realities of the same event can both be right. Identify triggers, the enduring vulnerabilities that predate the relationship. Accept responsibility for your own part, however small, which their research found creates a highly effective opening for repair, and plan what each will do differently. The chapter's exercise is a list of 25 fundamental difference areas designed to surface perpetual problems before they detonate, with the instruction to state needs positively and specifically, because there is usually a story underneath every strong emotion. The third date is sex and intimacy, built almost entirely from couples' voices, Katya and Ethan illustrating mismatched sexual upbringings, Grace and Mia negotiating frequency thresholds, Matthew and Erin covering the postnatal case in which being held and comforted is what registers as sexy right now. The teaching addresses the question underneath all of it: what is normal? The answer is whatever works for the two of you, but the authors supply data, a University of Chicago study finding 80% of married couples have sex a few times a month or more. The strongest evidence comes from The Normal Bar by Christiane Northrup, Pepper Schwartz, and James White, a survey of 70,000 responses across 24 countries. Couples with great sex lives say I love you daily and mean it, kiss passionately for no reason, cuddle daily and talk about sex comfortably. And only 6% of non-cuddlers had a great sex life. The champion countries were Spain and Italy. On talking about sex, the research is that couples who can talk openly about it have more sex and the women have more orgasms, yet only a minority can. The technique is to focus on what you like rather than what is wrong, and to have the conversation outside the bedroom. The author's example is a couple who conduct a next morning sex review over coffee. Always positive, never a bad review. On initiation, over 70% of people use indirect strategies in what the authors call a face-saving way. The chapter then presents general sex differences with an explicit caveat that almost no research exists on transgender couples. 54% of men versus 19% of women think about sex daily, and men generally like to have sex in order to feel emotionally connected, while women need to feel emotionally connected in order to have sex. A sentence nearly 90% of interviewed couples endorsed. The authors offer a structural corroboration. Gay men, with the fewest prerequisites, have the most sex of any couple type, and lesbians, with the most, the least. Female desire functions as a barometer for how the rest of her world is going. Two findings soften the picture. Despite more prerequisites, women agree to sex at the same rate men do. Psychologists Sandra Byers and Larry Heinlein found both say yes about 75% of the time, and on accepting a no, the rule is not to take it personally. Because couples who master accepting a no end up having more sex than couples where refusal produces sulking. The recommended reply makes no the start of a different conversation. Thanks for telling me. What are you in the mood for? The chapter's closing prescription is the 6-second kiss on every parting and reunion. The authors describe the neurochemistry, dopamine, oxytocin, 5 of 12 cranial nerves activated, and cite a 10-year German study finding men who kissed their wives before work lived 5 years longer and earned 20% more, but insist the real point is relational. For 6 seconds, you disconnect from the world outside and choose each other again. The Love Lab supplies the demanding number here. Successful relationships show a 20-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions in everyday life. The fourth date takes on work and money through Adam and Trevor, married 2 years, who nearly detonated over a small inheritance. Adam wanted it all saved. Trevor wanted the Southeast Asia trip they had always dreamed of. The resolution came entirely from history. Trevor's father died at 35, and every promised adventure died in a someday that never arrived. While Adam's father lost a job with no savings, sending Adam to work at 12 to help cover rent. Once each understood the other's history, the fight ended. And it was Trevor, not Adam, who proposed spending only 10%. The teaching's sharpest claim is that in a sample of 4,574 couples, financial arguments were the single best predictor of divorce among all issues. But the predictive variable is not the disagreement, it is how the couple argues about it. Money conflict is never about numbers. It is about what money means, and the meaning is inherited. The authors dismantle the spender and saver stereotypes by giving each side's self-description and each side's caricature, concluding that we are all savers and spenders at different times. Work receives equal weight as the potential third party in a relationship. The authors reject the myth that a good marriage requires choosing between the two. The problem is when the commitments conflict and 60, 80, or 100 hours a week is a simple numbers game that leaves nothing for the relationship. Their illustration is John's own failure. For their 14th annual honeymoon, he packed his physics books and worked 16 hours a day for 5 days, and on the 5th night, at a restaurant, Julie meant to order fettuccine alfredo and instead burst into tears. The authors are precise about what the moment shows. Even a marriage expert can let priorities drift far enough that it takes his wife's tears to notice. And precise about what Julie was asking. Not that he abandoned the book forever, only that he set it down for the honeymoon week. The chapter's social history draws on Stephanie Kuntz's The Way We Never Were to correct nostalgia for the 1950s breadwinner arrangement, under which married women were often depressed, unfulfilled, and medicated. Contemporary data shows workloads have converged, 59 hours a week for men, 58 for women, and a 2007 Pew study found that after faithfulness and a good sex life, sharing household chores ranked as the most important element of a successful marriage. Doug and Rachel supply the second narrative. During her residency, they saw each other almost only on date night, and one night they never left the parking lot. Rachel said aloud that she was afraid they would not make it, realized her marriage mattered more than medicine, and took a month off rather than lose it. During that month, they ranked priorities: health and spiritual well-being first, marriage second, family third, work and money last, which the authors present as their list rather than the correct one. For couples where overwork is a live complaint, they supply 2 question sets. For the overworking partner, what does your work mean to you, and what need does it fulfill? For the frustrated partner, what does your partner's absence mean, and what connection are you longing for? The chapter's last movement returns to meaning, citing the Talmud that a rich person is one who has enough, and finding that for women enough money is often equated with love, respect, and security, while for men the recurring interplay is with power, competence, provision, winning. The 5th date is family, opening with Jamal and Luciana, engaged, who agree they want children and disagree about how many. He wants 1, having grown up in a family of 5, permanently in crisis mode. She wants 3, having grown up with a mother who ran the household from a master calendar and would have had 10. What the authors highlight is not the disagreement, but its handling. Luciana names the actual deal breaker. She could not be with someone who wanted no children, and then holds the number loosely. The teaching broadens the definition of family well beyond the husband, wife, and picket fence, to include biological, step, adopted, foster, or no children, same-sex and trans parents, relatives, pets, and close friends. Wherever you feel love, belonging, and a sense of home, what matters is not the arrangement, but that you discuss it. The deal-breaker warning is repeated in its sharpest form. Marrying in the expectation of changing a partner's mind about children is a disaster in slow motion. The costs are given plainly. A child born in 2015 Costs an average of $233,610 to raise through age 17 for a middle-income family before college. The chapter's central argument is that the primary relationship must be protected after children arrive, defended against the cultural instinct using two public cases, the Rancics, who said they put their marriage first because the best thing they could do for their son was to have a strong marriage, and Eilert Waldman, who drew public anger for writing that she loved her husband more than her children. The scientific spine is the U-shaped curve, first traced by sociologist Ernest Burgess in the 1930s. Marital satisfaction drops after the wedding, dives when the first child arrives, dives further with each additional child, and rises again only when the youngest leaves home. John's own newlywed study found 67% of couples showed a precipitous drop in the baby's first 3 years, but a third did not, and examining wedding-era footage, he found the predictor. The men who were more respectful toward their wives and more accepting of their wives' influence were the ones whose satisfaction did not fall, and during pregnancy, those same men were involved, talked to the baby, and complimented their partner. John and Julie reversed the drop for 77% of couples in a 2-day workshop, which became their book and Baby Makes 3. 2 goals follow. Both partners stay involved through pregnancy and infancy, and both maintain intimacy through date nights, avoiding defensiveness, criticism, contempt, and withdrawal. The 6th date is fun and adventure, and its opening move kills the opposite myth from the conflict chapter. Partners need not share ideas about fun. What matters is finding every way to play together and supporting each other in separate adventures. Play, the authors insist, is a necessity, not an indulgence, and typically the first thing dropped. The evidence is assembled from 4 researchers, Howard Markman, whose Denver study found couples who play and laugh are happier; Arthur Aaron, who found novel arousing shared activities made couples happier by a simple mechanism, that if they were having fun with their partner must be fun; Stuart Brown, founder of the National Institute for Play, who holds we are designed to play across the whole lifespan, and that play refreshes an adult relationship through humor, novelty, and mutual storytelling; and Brian Sutton Smith, who supplies the chapter's sharpest line, the opposite of play is not work, it is depression. The neuroscience is the seeking system and the reward system, with dopamine as the chief neurotransmitter and novelty earning the brain a large dopamine prize. Cynthia Thompson's research on what she calls the daredevil gene explains why some people need more extreme adventure to obtain the same reward. The chapter's set piece is Everest. Julie announced she intended to trek to base camp before turning 50, and John, the marriage professional, responded, "Have you completely lost your mind?" What she did next is the lesson. She listened to his fear, acknowledged it, and walked him through the itinerary, training, and safety precautions until he agreed. What John draws from it is the chapter's thesis in personal form. The love of his life is fundamentally different from him, an athlete and explorer, while his own adventure is differential equations from the safety of a chair, and because it mattered to her, he had to support it. Their solution is not conversion, but intersection, a 2-person kayak, where they must trust and depend on each other, and where they have never once criticized each other while paddling. The authors state the finding that matters most for mismatched couples. There is no correlation between having common interests and relationship happiness. You need not play the same way, but you must both play, and you must find the place where your styles intersect. The authors also explain, under the heading of the Christie-Brinkley phenomenon, why shared danger bonds couples. The bodily response to fear resembles arousal and can be misattributed to attraction. And note that the hormone PEA, which produces the high of new love, is subject to tolerance that is routinely mistaken for the end of love, but can be reactivated by adventure together. The 7th date takes up growth and spirituality through Erica and Jake, who met at 16 and 18. Jake, 10 years sober, describes acquiring what he calls a higher power, not God, he says, but godlike, and credits Erica's ultimatum with a transformation that produced a marriage and a career mentoring at-risk boys. Erica's side records the cost of another person's transformation. She found the newly sober Jake hard to trust and feared he would outgrow her, and instead his change prompted hers, a silent meditation retreat, leaving a well-paid job she had only pretended to love, and taking up painting, all of it supported by Jake because it mattered to her. The teaching is compact. In relationships, the only constant is change, and the question is how each partner accommodates the other's growth. People grow by encountering a mind unlike their own, and the goal is never to make a partner resemble you, but to benefit from the ways you differ. The research is notable. Couples who hold their relationship as sacred have better relationships, and partners who experience the sex between them as sanctified report more of it and higher satisfaction. And cuts against expectation, since differing religious beliefs are not a major source of conflict. Shared meaning matters more than shared doctrine, and shared meaning is built from rituals of connection, for parting and reunion, for celebrating triumphs, and for grief and illness. 2 questionnaires do the work, and the Goals questionnaire contains the most demanding exercise in the book. Write your own eulogy and say what you would most want remembered. The 8th date is dreams, and it resolves the gridlock problem posed on the 2nd date. Keisha and Alex find the subject uncomfortable. Alex would love to be an artist, but bills must be paid. And Keisha's response is the method in miniature. If she knows the dream, she can make room for it, starting small. The teaching is unambiguous that dreams, your own and your partner's, are as critical as trust and sex. The authors return to John and Julie's honeymoon the year after the ruined one, when John left the books behind, and they asked each other how they could honor the other's dreams, and trace the consequences concretely, since John asking Julie about her dreams surfaced Everest, and Julie asking John surfaced the wish that became the Relationship Research Institute, and in turn, the Gottman Institute. The argument reframes loyalty. Can you be loyal not only to your partner, but to what is most sacred to them? When each honors the other's dreams, everything else gets easier. Doug and Rachel's history illustrates the mechanism the authors call taking turns. He gave up a New York publishing dream to follow her to medical school. When she wanted twins, he worked 2 jobs and commuted hours daily. When he wanted to start a literary agency with no model, she took extra urgent care shifts to fund it. When her own clinic failed, he refused to push her back into 10-minute patient appointments, knowing it would damage her soul. Rachel's verdict after 31 years is that honoring her dreams is the #1 way Doug makes her feel loved. And her formulation of the constraint is the chapter's most useful sentence. Each person can make all their dreams come true, but not at the same time. You take turns. The authors state the cost of the alternative, surrendering or suppressing a dream, produces bitterness, resentment, and enormous distance, and then complete the book's architecture. Some of our deepest dreams are rooted in childhood, and an unshared longing does not disappear, but reappears as gridlocked conflict. This is the structural payoff. The unresolvable argument diagnosed on the 2nd date is revealed on the 8th to be a dream in disguise. If your partner dreams of Everest, do not raise the time and the money. Be curious about why they have the dream, because there is a story inside everyone. The conclusion returns deliberately to trust, which opened the book and closes it, because the authors hold it central to the success and failure of all relationships. They add a corrective to the compatibility instinct that runs through the whole book. You do not have to be similar for love to last, and most couples are more dissimilar than similar. What is required is the courage to be vulnerable and to not hide parts of yourself. The closing instructions are small and concrete. Do not part in the morning without knowing one interesting thing about your partner's day, kiss goodbye and hello, honor each other's dreams. And the ratios are restated, 5-1 positive to negative during conflict, 20-1 when simply together. The summarizing verb is cherish, defined operationally as making the relationship a priority. What this book establishes, taken whole, is that love is not a feeling that happens to people, but a practice they perform, and that the practice is teachable. The specificity earns it, 6 seconds, 20-1, 69%, 99 reasons. Its most valuable single insight may be the smallest, that the negative comp, the quiet mental habit of measuring the person you have against someone you have imagined, is where betrayal actually begins, long before anything happens that anyone would name. The remedy is not restraint, but attention, knowing the person in front of you so thoroughly that the alternatives lose their imaginative grip. And there is something in the book's architecture that reaches further than its data can explain. It insists a relationship must be held as sacred, that vows be spoken aloud, that a promise is a form of freedom, rather than a limit on it. John's Alice in Wonderland parable is the truest thing in the book precisely because it is not a research finding. Alice jumps in with 2 feet. She is not calculating whether Wonderland will deliver adequate value. That is a vow, and a vow is what makes a person free to live inside a life rather than perpetually shop for a better one. Nearly everything else, the trust, the cherishing, the repair, the dream honoring, depends on that prior act. Read it for the practices, which are excellent and immediately usable. The exercises, the questionnaires, and the 99 reasons do not summarize, and they are the part you will actually use.